Good day, everybody, and welcome to this webinar. Today, we will talk about finding out if an area of a page is actually empty. This is specifically useful in packaging when you need to have, for example, an empty space to print the lot number or expiration date of the product. There is a check for that. It's called ink coverage in effective area. It is useful for more than just is this empty. You can use it to find any ink coverage percentage that you're looking for. But it is very useful here because it is based on a rendered page. This avoids issues with objects that might be invisible on your screen, but that would become visible in print. Normally in pdfToolbox, the thing you see on your screen is exactly what you will see in print. It is very good at that, and you shouldn't have any differences in your visual on screen and your printed document. But there might always be exceptions to this. So since it is based on a rendered page, it is actually really accurate in that regard. The disadvantage for this check is that the effective area the custom area that you choose for this fix-up is it needs to be defined. So you have to manually define exactly what area you're checking. So it's not as automated as most things in Toolbox are. So let's go to a demonstration of that as well. I made this new file here. This is a file containing lots of different ink percentages. I have some checks here. This one, space is not empty. So I'm using the check effective ink coverage in custom area. This is the one that you will be using for this. I set it to greater than 0, so anything more than 0% ink coverage will hit on this check. And my sample size is 5 points. You can set your sample size to whatever you want as long as it is not 0. If you set your sample size to 0, not only in this check, but in a variety of checks that uses this, you will get an unexplainable error. So it has to have some area to check. So I set it to 5 points. And do not stop after first hit, because otherwise, if there are multiple hits within your chosen area, you will only see one. And sometimes it's useful to see all of them. Then you have the positioning. It's relative to the media box. And you set your X offset, your Y offset, your width, and your height of your object. So the thing to realize here is where your offsets start. So you have to know where your positioning happens. To do this, a good way to do it is to use the test mode with create and apply shapes fix-up. So this specific check will hit. If I use test mode here, we'll see a hit because nothing on this page is less than 5% ink coverage. Since I'm looking for 0%, no matter where it is, it will hit. Now if I go to my fix-ups, I have this empty space finder fix-up that I used here. I can use test mode here as well, and you can see, oh, this area on my page is being checked by that fix-up. So what did I do to get this? I'm creating and applying a shape. I'm using the create and apply shapes fix-up. From custom box, render only inside area, apply the shape in front of the content with a color 100% cyan. In create shapes, you have just about the same positioning here. It's also positioning based on actual values. So you can see it's relative to the lower left corner. That's because the lower left corner is the origin point for these PDFs. This is your 0 point. So anything to the right of that 0 point is plus, upwards is plus. And that's what you use these for. So this one is set for a specific area. I will show you later why I have this done. Let's say this one is specifically made for this file. So let's have a look at this. If I test this, you will see I have this area selected on this part of the page. So in the 5% field underneath the text, because the text would be 100% black, so it would show up as more than 5%. You can see in test mode, I can find out this field is exactly here. That's why I said test mode is really useful here. I don't have to actually execute this fixup. I never actually executed this fixup before because I can just use test mode to see where that field is going to end up. If I go to check and I have this area, so this specific check, what it does is the same thing. It uses effective ink coverage in custom area, but it's looking for anything greater than 10%. So any area that I select that has a greater ink coverage than 10% will hit, which means on this file, it will not hit because we know my field is over here in the 5% area. So you don't have to use it to find empty space. You can actually use this to find specific ink coverages if this is useful for you. Now, I will show you where it is actually used, this sort of workflow, and that's with packagings. So I have this packagings. Of course, I had to make sure I had more penguins in this presentation because I had a relatively small amount of penguins up till now. I have this packaging for penguin treats. You can see there is a white area on this packaging, and this white area is where the lot number and the expiration date are to be printed. This happens afterwards, so I don't have these in the file. But I have to make sure that nothing is here, because it will not be very visible if it is printed on top of the green. Or on top of a coating or a varnish, for example, where it won't print at all. So I want this to have a nice empty area. Now I have my check. Of course, let's go for the fixup first, the empty space finder. You'll remember I had a rectangle shape there. If I use test, we will see I am actually looking for this specific area over here within this white field. I can size this up a little bit probably. There we go. So you see it is this little field over here inside my white field that becomes cyan because I have this shape there. I use these exact same location data, so these exact same measurements, to create my check for empty space. Let's go there. You can see these have the same values that I had before. I can do tests, and we will see, oh, this does not hit. So we know this space is empty. This space does not have anything in it, and I can safely print my lot number in there. If I use the same check on, for example, my other test file, you can see, oh, this space is not empty. There is something in that space wherever that box ends up. There is something there. But now I don't know where the box ends up. So that's why I could use that check before. I have a second one for not empty space. The difference between this one, if I show you where that box ends up, I have different measurement values here. I have 107 and 110. If I do test, you can see that box ends up a little bit more up to the right than the one before. So there is obviously something underneath there. If I go back to that check, so I have this check for not empty space, edit, test, we will see, oh, this has a hit, the space is not empty because this box ends up over here and not inside the white area. It may have, you may have noticed that the area that I have selected in my empty space finder is not the exact same size. I made sure to make it a little bit smaller than the white box, just to make sure that I don't accidentally hit a pixel on the side or something, because I just based this on visually where this blue box ends up, and I thought it was safer to make it a little bit smaller than the actual field. So maybe I can go through the steps to create one of those from scratch. So I'll create a new check. I'll call this empty space live. We can go to ink coverage in custom area. So this is the check, effective ink coverage in custom area. You can see I found it by typing ink coverage. Add. You can also see this text that gets added when you're looking at the check. It says for this property, the whole page is rendered and is determined whether the ink coverage within any area of the page is greater than the threshold defined here. So the page is rendered and it checks if the ink coverage within the area you define is greater than anything. I set the threshold to 0 because I want to have empty space. This sample size has to be filled in, so I'll make this 5 points by 5 points relative to the media box. And then you type in your measurements, and of course you have to know your measurements, and I don't know them right now. So I'll save this, empty space live is saved. I'll create a fixup, create fixup, and I'll do this empty space finder live. I'll use the create and apply shapes fixup, create from media box, render only the inside shape, apply shapes. There we go. I'll put this on 100% magenta. Oh, of course, from custom box I was supposed to type. So now that you see I have this field. The horizontal offset I don't know. I know the width is supposed to be 38 by 18 because I know my, actually this can be 42 probably, because I know that my empty white field is 44 by 20. So 42 by 18 leaves a little bit of white space around it, and millimeters. I'll start from the lower left corner of the crop box, that's fine. Okay, so now test. See where it ends up on the bottom left. So that's where your 0 point is. Your 0 point is the bottom left of the page. I can just test, oh, it does appear. Then I can go here to apply shapes. I'm wrong, sorry. I can enter an offset. So I'll enter the offset here, let's say 50 by 50. Okay, test. See where this ends up. A little bit higher, okay. So maybe 100 by 100. Okay, test. You see, oh, it's ended up a little bit too far, but I'm very close. So maybe the height is not 100, but like 98. And the width was a bit too far, so let's make that 80. Okay, test, see where it ends up. It's too far to the left, so 80 was too little, but the height is perfect. I can do it again. I will say 87. Test. There we are. It's perfectly in space. And now that I know where my spot is, using test mode and create and apply shape, I can see, this is the area I need. So horizontal offset 87, vertical offset 98, width 42, height 18. Help me remember that because I'm gonna have to fill that in the check. So edit, we have the offset place here. So it was 87, 98, the width was 42 and the height was 18. Of course, make sure this is in millimeters because it's default in centimeters. I can do tests and no problems found because we found the box, we're inside the box. If I change this to 107 and I do test, we will have a hit because it's outside of that box.